Hey YouTube, how's it going? It's Max. Today I wanted to talk a little bit about hitting the desk. I want to talk a little bit about choices and consequences. Um, as I guess I'll do a couple updates first. I just noticed that last video I said I was gonna shave. Still haven't shaved yet, but I did order a new razor. I've had my current razor for like 7 years, so I think that's probably what's turning me off from shaving. So I'll get a new razor soon, and hopefully that will be motivation for me to shave it. It's just one of those things. I use the electric razors, and it kind of it's not as sharp as it could be. I don't know if maybe I just don't take care of it enough, but yeah, hopefully I'll get the new razor soon, and that will I'll be motivated to shave more. I guess some other updates. My finger is currently healing. So it's a few days ago, I think last Tuesday, so almost a week ago, I cut it open while cutting some bread. So that's healing pretty well. And then, went to the gym, exercised yesterday. I don't have a routine workout schedule. It would be something I'd like to adopt eventually, but as of right now, it's not one of my main priorities. I also got a good night's sleep. I don't know if I said that already, but I got to sleep until 9:30. It's my day off today, and usually when I go in for work or whatever, I have to wake up around like 5:30. So it's good to get the extra 4 hours of sleep. Um, most nights don't really get to bed until like 11 p.m. anyway. So I don't even really fall asleep till midnight, but I have been starting to use melatonin, which has been helping a lot. So yeah, those are just some updates. Just I guess I'll go back to I was gonna talk about choices and consequences today. Um, and I think this is a topic that it could be misunderstood, so I'll try to explain it. So when I say choices and consequences, I think it's this is one of those concepts that I'm like always kind of thinking about. I try to think about it every day when I'm making decisions. Um, I think it's probably like obvious that every choice has a consequence. I think that that's something that like everyone's kind of heard that before, but I think like with this, often we think about, every choice has a consequence, but I don't think that we think about it in a mindful way a lot of the time. I think that it's something that we kind of like when our conscious kind of talks to us, and it's like, you should probably make this decision. And we are like, it's not a big enough decision. I'm just gonna ignore it and face the music or whatever. But I guess I think that it's ultimately this is something that I think has helped me kind of process things in the world, and I think it's healthy to sort of just be mindful of this, especially if you have any goals of your life or if you feel like you're in like kind of like a rut or something, and you're like, man, why am I in this position? How can I get out of this position? How can I be healthier? How can I be happier? How can I be like less angry all the time or something like that? I think that this is a like especially if you feel like you're like the victim or if you feel like you're um, just in like a position like that. I think that this mentality can really kind of help. I don't think it's like the answer. I just think that it's a skill, I guess, that everyone can adopt, and I think that it's positive for everyone's life, or at least has the potential to be. And if you don't want to uh, adopt this, you don't have to. It's kind of just that's your choice, and there's consequences to that. But anyway, I kind of want to spend some time defining this because, like I said, I think that this might be like while it's simple, it might be misunderstood. So when I say that like every choice has a consequence, I'm not talking about like macro decisions in our life. So like if you have this goal to be like rich or good looking or famous, something a bit more abstract, I don't think that like those are necessarily consequences of choice. I think that I'm talking more about like the micro decisions we make on a day-to-day basis. So like, um, you know, am I gonna brush my teeth today? If you say yes, I'm going to brush my teeth today, then that gets you into you have good teeth hygiene. When you go talk to people, people aren't going to be like, oh wow, that person has bad breath. It's like those mini choices that we make on a day-to-day basis. So like, am I going to um, you know go outside and take a walk? Am I not going to take a walk? Am I going to, pretty much, am I going to hang out with friends? Am I not going to hang out with friends? Am I going to go to work today? Am I going to stay home? Every choice we make has choices and consequences. And I think that it's just good to be mindful of that. And like I said, this isn't like um, being like rich or famous, successful, getting the job. I think that there's a lot of luck or RNG in life. I know some people don't believe in luck, but at the end of the day, I think that there is this probability factor in life, and just kind of things that are outside of your control. And I guess what I like an example of this is like, let's say that you're trying to make a sports team, like a hockey team, has 20 rosters, but there are way more than 20 people that are trying out for this team. Let's say that there's at least like 100 people trying out for this team, and at least 50 of them are amazing hockey players. Um, at some point, um, the decision for you to be on the team is not in your control, and whether you want to call it luck or probability, or just the coach, whether the coach knows the chemistry between players and wants to fit a certain chemistry or something like that. Um, there might not be a spot on the team, and so like just because you try really hard, that doesn't mean that you're guaranteed a spot on the team. Just because you make every correct choice in life doesn't mean that you're gonna go with only good consequences. Um, I don't know if that makes sense. This is sort of kind of getting into like this other concept I like to think about called protagonist syndrome. But that's probably a video for another time. Ultimately, just we make choices. There's consequences. Just because you make good choices doesn't mean that you're always going to have good consequences. Is what I'm saying. Um, it's just a probability thing. And so the point of me talking about this isn't to tell you that you should think this way, but rather if you ever have these thoughts of in your life, such as like you constantly like blame other people for like bad things happening to you, or just you feel like there's things that are constantly out of your control, you wind up in these positions all the time. I just think that this might not be the answer. It just might be a good thing to think about ultimately. So I wanted to talk about two examples. I was going to talk about a simple example and then kind of a more complicated example. So the simple example is, let's say that you have a test coming up for school and you want to get an A, but it's the night before. You have these friends that are going to going bowling or something, and you really want to go bowling with your friends. You have this fear of missing out, but you also want to get a good night's sleep, so that you're not tired in class the next day. So there's three things: uh, you want to study, you want to hang out with friends, and you want to go to bed early. And you might not be able to do all three of them. And some people might say, oh, well, the obvious answer here is to not hang out with your friends. You should study and then get a good night's sleep, because it's a good long-term outcome. And yet that's a fine mentality. But there's also other choices. Like you could say, hey, friends, instead of going bowling tonight, do you guys want to study for an hour? And then maybe we could go bowling, and maybe you guys can go bowling, and I'll, um, stay back and study a bit more. Maybe they want to just study the entire night. Like, oh yeah, we do have this test coming up. We can study. And then you go to bed early, checks all the boxes. Um, because that's also you're studying, you're hanging out with friends, and you're going to bed early. So checks all the boxes. Um, and that's another option too. Is it better than the first option? I guess it depends. There's other variables there, like what if your friends distract you from studying and you don't actually have a good study sesh? So there's always going to be unforeseen consequences, but I guess really it's setting yourself up to um, to understand the choices you're making will have consequences, and are you okay with those consequences? um, and the point of this is really just to showcase just an example in life where I guess there's an event, because when this happens, you're gonna have like that conscious trigger, and instead of just ignoring it and like going, oh, I'm just gonna go hang out with friends, to really kind of think about what's going on and what could happen based on the choices you're making. Because if, like, down the line, when you're applying to colleges or whatever, and you're looking back at all your test scores, and you have like C's and everything, you're like, man, I why is college so hard to get into? What could I have done better? That could have been like, just all these micro choices leading up could have prevented you from feeling that way. And ultimately, that's there are no right or wrong answers, because not everyone's going to come into that situation. College isn't for everybody. So, if you're okay getting C's, or if you don't even really need to study, you're one of those people that's fortunate enough to get good grades no matter how much you study, because you just kind of remember things very well, then this might not apply to you. But this is just kind of one example that I felt like was kind of applicable, um, to a lot of different people. And if you're in a position where um, you feel like you need to make a change in your life, and life is just frustrating you, then I believe that kind of being more mindful about these things, could being like the choices versus consequences, uh, may help you live a calmer, more peaceful life. Um, and then the second kind of thing I wanted to talk about is a more complicated issue. This one kind of revolves around pride and competitiveness. So not everyone is competitive, so this may not apply to you. But I get this sense that when we're faced in a position where there is like a winner and loser, we tend to like to win the games. We don't want to lose. Sometimes when we lose, we feel like people are looking down on us or something. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. But there's just like this general sensation of frustration when you lose, especially if it's not just like chess or something. If it's like a team sport where like you weren't the cause of the loss, like your teammate was. I played a lot of travel hockey growing up, so sorry for all the hockey references. I've also played like games online, like League of Legends, where it's like teamwork based. Especially in that game, there's a lot of people blaming each other. Even sometimes playing like board games with friends or something, or even just fun party games where you have teams. I just kind of noticed that we as humans tend to have a competitive behavior, and that's not necessarily a problem. It's a common mentality. I just feel like sometimes competitiveness can be taken a little bit too far, and wanted to address that. Um, Again, ultimately, not trying to argue here that I'm not trying to argue that this is like I don't know what I'm trying to say here. It's not. I guess what I'm trying to say is that it's not often easy to let go of pride. So I don't think that this is like your one-two uh, thing to let go of pride. But there are skills here that can help you manage these frustrated emotions. And also, I'm not an expert, so uh, you know this could be some. I feel like I'm just saying this too much, that I'm not an expert, and that whatever. Anyway, let's get to the example. So let's say you're playing hockey, and your teammate decides to shoot the puck instead of pass it to you. And this shot is like a terrible shot. He shouldn't have taken it. It's an awkward angle, and if only he passed it to you, it would have been a very easy goal. Goalie wouldn't have had the chance to block it. The goalie was in this weird position where like he was obviously going to block this shot, but if your teammate just passed it to you, would have been an easy goal. Let's say that your teammate completely misses, completely goofs, and because of this goof, whatever they do, they pretty much just give the puck away to the other team. The other team goes down and scores easily. And now you're in this position where if your teammate just passed it to you, you would have scored, and that would have been good, and it's all your teammate's fault. Um, in this moment, our innate response is most likely frustration. We're mad at our teammate because they made this poor decision, poor choice in judgment, and it led to a mistake that ultimately cost us personally. I think that there's many different options here, but to name five choices how we could choose to react to this. Number one, we could choose to confront the teammate about their decision so that in the future they can, we can teach them essentially that what they did was wrong so that they can uh, learn from this mistake and not make it again in the future. Option two, we can get all angry and we can vent. We can go back on the bench and we can talk about how frustrated we are so that everyone knows. Um, Option three, we can, pull the coach aside privately and, tell the coach that, this teammate has been making a lot of poor decisions lately. Does it make sense to keep him on the team? Especially if they are a person who has routinely made decisions like this and it's ultimately cost the team, does it make sense to keep them? You could talk to your coach, talk about that. Four, we could ignore it and move on with our day. And five, we could tell the teammate that it was a good try. There are many options to this problem. As I said, uh, the right I might not have picked an option that you would have done. Maybe there's something else that you think would have been a good choice to react to this situation, but I just wanted to leave it at, five. I think five is already a lot. Um, and maybe right now, you know, when you look at this, maybe there's something that you recognize that you constantly do, but now that you're kind of like listening to this, maybe there's like another option that you're like, maybe I should adopt that strategy instead. So, like, for example, maybe you tend to, get angry and vent about what happens, and maybe it's like something you can't really control. But now that you're looking at this, maybe you're like, maybe I should just, ignore it and move on with my day. Maybe that's a better option. Um, and so I guess, like, for example, uh, ultimately there are no right and wrong answers. I've said this many times, but I kind of want to talk about a negative consequence of each option, just to kind of back this up because I keep saying there are no right or wrong choices. There is a potential negative outcome for each one. So for option one, the negative option is that we may confront the person who made a poor decision, and this ultimately doesn't really help them out. They just become kind of angry with us. They start playing worse because of this, and they're just more self-conscious in their head about making mistakes because they realize that they're making mistakes, and people are realizing that they're making mistakes. They ultimately aren't playing well, and they're no longer really being an asset to the team, despite your good intentions of trying to make them play better by teaching them. Option two, getting angry and venting. Maybe it makes you feel slightly better about yourself that you're able to vent and whatever. But ultimately, it makes everyone else kind of feel a little bit on edge and uneasy. It makes you seem like someone who isn't able to control your emotions, that you're easily tilted. Um, so just kind of like causing negative vibes around. Option three, telling your coach. This could also easily backfire. Maybe from your coach's perspective, your coach saw that you were actually not in a good position either, despite you have this sound logical argument in your head that you played it perfectly. The coach is looking at it and going, no, you could have made a mistake there. And the fact that you're not realizing your own mistakes and that you're blaming other people for mistakes could bode negatively back on you. For option four, say we ignore it. Maybe the player, will continue to make those mistakes without you because you didn't, tell them that they were making a mistake. Maybe that this could lead to them, jeopardizing the team in the future over and over again. Um, and maybe on the other side, if you ignore it, maybe they feel this sort of like shame, and sort of like, this is probably a terrible example, but like when you they talk about like bullying in school and like the kids who also are just like ignored, they're uh, kind of just off to their own, and sometimes people are like, um, it's worse to be ignored than bullied. This feeling of feeling like you don't exist or whatever. Um, Maybe that's also kind of a thing if like people start to just ignore this player, and they start to feel kind of just like isolated from the rest of the group. Like, let's say I know I'm dragging on all. Sorry, I know I'm dragging on about this one, But I guess let's say that this kind of thing where you just kind of start to ignore them becomes a habit. So like, you're hanging out with the team afterwards and you just continue to ignore this person. This might be a stretch, but I don't know. It just made me think of that just now. I didn't actually like write that down in my notes or anything, but just the possibility of ignoring them could be bad. And then positive reinforcement. Maybe this might not be the best motivator as a possible negative context. Maybe that, telling them good try kind of like makes them not as serious about the game, and they're, kind of more lackadaisical or whatever, and nonchalant about playing the game. And you think that people should be serious about the sport, and this person just is like, whatever, it's mistakes happen, but doesn't really take it seriously. So those are again five just like possible consequences to kind of highlight that there is no perfect choice here, because there's always going to be a negative a room for a negative consequence. Um, and I guess for me, I'll talk a little bit about like my thought process in this. So I would personally go with option five, to, kind of try to tell the teammate that it was a good try. And my reasoning for this is that for me personally, I want to maintain a positive sort of atmosphere, increase good morales, and I think that for me, I think that this teammate probably recognizes that they've made a mistake. And if I keep the good morale on the team, then we're in a better position to uh, bounce back and get a goal from that. I feel like if I am going to make a big deal out of this and kind of try to, maybe teach this person or vent about it, I feel like these are all setting me up in a position where it could backfire on me, and it would decrease morale, and then we'd get further into this hole. We wouldn't get momentum back to win the game. So ultimately, I think that's my thought process. Um, and I think that this also kind of impacts sort of outside of the game too. So, like in a year from now, or maybe even in a week, based on my decision making, I kind of think about this like Sims sometimes. So, like every choice that you make, in Sims where they have like the red minus signs or the positive green plus signs above their head. I think it was in Sims 3. I don't know if it's on all the other Sims, but pretty much it's if you keep having those positive kind of interactions with people on an individual basis, then you get more of those green plus signs. And I feel like that's kind of like a good, like, if I can leave the conversation being like, that was a good interaction with green positive check signs, that only really helps my relationship with that person. And I think that ultimately I value that more than I do winning the hockey game. I know that's not for everybody. Some people might, value winning the hockey game more than positive relationships with people. But I think that's just something to kind of keep in mind, especially if you do want to have positive relationships with people and you see that it's kind of going south and you're not really sure why. That might be a good way to think about it. Um, but yeah, ultimately, this is kind of like what I've been saying. If you're feeling frustrated with the consequences of an event, if you come back from something and you feel like you need to have more closure on the event, I just think that this is a good way to kind of think about things sometimes. Um, Especially like, if things aren't living up to your expectations. I feel like I'm just kind of saying the same thing over and over again. But I feel like the reason why I'm like saying the same thing over and over again is just I don't want it to kind of come off as though I am, I don't know, like I think that this is it. Life is just kind of this subjective experience that we're kind of going through. And I'm kind of going a little bit off script, but I just don't think that we should like control people. I don't think that that is the best way to really live life. So when I'm uh, talking about this, I don't want you to, take my words as gospel. I think that this can help prevent mistakes from happening, but I don't think that like what am I trying to say? I don't think that even this is very like complicated because I know there's like some contexts where like it's good to like kind of try to control your life and make a choice to, I'm going to make a change in my life that does ultimately impact other people. But I guess I just don't want to make a lot of choices to where I'm actually doing harm by telling someone to make a choice and then it impacts them negatively. Um, so yeah, I don't know. I feel like I'm kind of just losing my train of thought here. But ultimately, this perspective has just kind of helped me kind of approach life, and hopefully, if you wanna, take it into consideration, then it can help your life too. But yeah, I guess I'll stop talking about the um, the possible negative consequences of it not helping you. But yeah, this is probably gonna be a terrible kind of thing, but you get the full raw footage of it. So yeah, later days.